Find the answers to questions you may or may not have asked yourself here at Kaleidoscience, Conversations on Cognitive Science, hosted by Elisa Palmer and Sönke Löw. We were at a special event, which was the CogSci Space Day. There we had the chance to talk to a great variety of different people and talk about their fields of interest, may they be students or professors. We talked about various aspects of cognitive science, such as neuroscience, linguistics, philosophy, or artificial intelligence, and many more. All the interviews were kept rather short, and another exception of our bonus episodes will be that not only Sönke and me are hosting, but also our two amazing producers Alina and Sophie, and both will jump into this role of being an interviewer. So stay curious and tune in.
We are here with Dr. Gregor Hörzer. Do you want to say a few words about yourself? What are you doing and who are you?
So as you just said, I'm Gregor Hörzer. I'm a member of the philosophy group here at the Institute of Cognitive Science, and I do a whole lot of administrative work as well. I'm the coordinator of the Cognitive Science program and the Dean of Studies. And if I find the time, I'd also do some research mostly in metaphysics and in the philosophy of science.
Nice, thank you very much. We always ask our guests one sentence to complete in the beginning, and that sentence is, as a kid, I always wanted to be.
Oh, that's a good question. I probably thought I'm going to be a computer scientist, and I went quite a bit in that direction before switching to philosophy. So, already with, 8 years or so, back then the computing systems were things like the Amstrad CPC, things like that, like C64 era, and I spent a lot of time with my brothers, typing in hex codes of listings to have in the end a little computer game or something like that. Back then there were no CDs delivered with computer magazines, but rather there were listings printed in the magazines, and I was spending a lot of time typing in stuff to have either games or fractals or something like that generated on the high quality systems back then. So I was very sure that I'm going to be doing something with computers, not sure whether, and then I actually started then studying computer science originally, basically up to the PhD, including that, and then I switched to philosophy, and since then I was more into metaphysics than I was into computer science anymore.
Now as a philosopher, how would you explain your research to someone who's 10 years old?
So that's a good question, very difficult to answer. It's already tricky to tell somebody who is not 10 years old. So maybe the most general thing one might say in this context is I'm always interested in the structure of debates in philosophy, looking at how different views relate to each other. And in particular, I'm interested in views regarding what the world is like most generally, what things there are, and how things relate to each other. That's kind of the overall interest that I always have, independent of what the particular thing I'm investigating is.
You already touched upon that you made a transition from computer science to philosophy. Can you maybe go a bit more into detail how you ended up where you are right now?
Sure. So, back in 2000, I started studying computer science at the University of Technology in Graz in Austria, and I was about at the more or less at the end of my bachelor's in computer science. It wasn't quite computer science. It was something in between computer science, electrical engineering, and mathematics. Back then it was called telematics. And today I think they call it information and computer engineering. So it was kind of in between those fields, and like I focused mostly on computational neuroscience and on bio and neuroinformatics, with a focus on like using machine learning in the context of things like gene expression analysis and stuff like that. And like when I was at the transition from the bachelor's to the master's, a colleague of mine with whom I basically did all my exercises and so on asked me whether I want to join him for a lecture at the other university in Graz, at the philosophy department, where there was like a lecture on the philosophy of neuroscience. And I thought, well, that sounds interesting. I have no idea what philosophy is, but let's go there and check it out. And immediately I was hooked. And I started like doing a little bit more in that regard. So I started like going to epistemology lectures and ethics lectures and so on. And at some point I thought, well, now that I've attended all those lectures, I might just do the exams as well. And then at some point I thought, well, now that I have all the exams, well, why not also register for that course of studies and basically do that too. And I kept doing the computer science stuff. And whenever I found the time, in particular, like in the evenings, there were a couple of lecturers at the philosophy department, usually doing their seminars from 6 to 8 in the evening. And that was pretty nice for me because I usually was working on the computer science stuff over the day, and then in the evening I went to those philosophy lectures, and that was a lot of fun, and like that was basically the start of that transition. But I still wanted to keep doing the computer science stuff, and so I also did a PhD in that area, and only then like went to finish the philosophy. Well, it was a combined bachelor's and master's program, the classical Magisterstudium in philosophy. And after that I came here to do another PhD with a philosophical topic in, well, cognitive science. Yeah, that was kind of the story.
I mean, the question is always framed like in the direction that forces our guests to tell their journey a certain way, but I think it's very interesting how maybe all these people here are very interdisciplinary and already combine a lot of the research fields that make up cognitive science. Is there maybe a moment for you where you realized there is this thing, cognitive science, and that's maybe the thing that I'm interested in?
Well, actually, up to the point where I first came here in 2012 as basically an Erasmus intern for a semester, because back then I was working on, or like preparing my master's thesis in philosophy and at the University of Graz. I was interested mostly like in this interrelationship between philosophy and neuroscience with respect to free will and mental causation. That was back then my main interest. And there was nobody really at the department in Graz really working on that, but one of the postdocs there knew Sven Walter, and she suggested to go here for one semester and just check out what is going on here. Up until then, I didn't know anything about cognitive science, actually. I did my philosophy stuff, I did my computer science stuff, and that was it. And here I basically got into touch with all these different, and I thought, well, okay, to some degree I know all that, but it's like connected together in a way that I was totally unfamiliar with. And so it was very, I really loved the engagement of the different disciplines here at the department. And then in 2014, I returned to do a PhD here because it was such a nice environment to do research and all the. So one thing that I think was, I guess, the most important one for me when I came here was that I found that, like, even though, of course, there is this, as everywhere in academia, there is this hierarchy, but it wasn't like you strongly felt that hierarchy. It was always like everyone's opinion was on a par in the seminars, and everyone was discussing with each other, and nobody cared about whether it's the position of a professor or whether it's the position of a bachelor student. That was always like everyone was taken seriously, and that is something that I didn't see that strongly before, and that was really something that brought me to thinking that this is a nice place to be.
And I've been here for a while.
And now I've been here since like almost 10 years now, yeah.
All right. The next question we have is, what are some breaking discoveries in your field of interest that are maybe quite recent?
Like things that I was involved in, or things that just happened
generally
in general. Well, I mean, one area of research I'm interested in, and on which I basically wrote my dissertation, is a debate about physicalism and the mind-body problem. And one position that has interestingly gained a lot of people getting interested in that position, and also developing it further, is the view that consciousness is not only limited to humans and some non-human animals, but consciousness is basically everywhere, so that even fundamental physical properties like having mass or having charge in the end are ultimately experiential, conscious properties that the sciences only look at with regard to what they make their bearers do, but their intrinsic nature is supposedly conscious. Some also argue that the universe is fundamental and is conscious. I'm not a defender of such a view, but I find such views very interesting, and also I find it interesting that even though they seem very weird at the start, if one takes them seriously, one can learn a lot about the structure of those debates. And as I said earlier, structures of debates are always what interests me the most.
Is there maybe some papers you can share with us later?
Sure. So, I mean, one recent, very strong advocate of a panpsychist view is Philip Goff, for example. I was also considering teaching a class on one of his recent books that just came out last weekend, I think, next semester, but I'm not quite sure yet. But I'll provide you with a couple of links.
That'd be great, thank you. Are there any scientists, like maybe Philip Goff or others, in your field or outside of it, dead or alive, that you would just want to have a chat with and maybe drink a tea with?
That I want to have a chat with or drink a tea with? Well, I mean, there are a couple of big names in the field that unfortunately have already passed away, but they still are, at least when it comes to their philosophy, very important for me. So there are like two people in particular, David Lewis and Saul Kripke. And they had very different views, but still they both had the ability to write very engagingly about very complex topics. And that's certainly two people I would. So Kripke actually met might be too much to say. I went to one of his lectures at some point at the University of Vienna after teaching a class on his main book, Naming Necessity. And the funny thing was that there were a number of students in that class that then also went to Vienna just to attend the talk. And that was something I really found nice, and I thought, well, maybe I didn't do the worst job then, if the students really were as keen on seeing the person in person and flying over to Vienna just for the talk.
Seems to be very engaging then. Maybe also interesting to sit down with Kripke and Lewis if they had such opposing views. Yeah,
I think they actually taught one or two seminars together in the 80s or 90s or something like that. But I wasn't there, of course.
So a while ago. I think that was all our questions. Yeah. Thank you for this short conversation. Thank you for joining us.
You're very welcome.
When you enjoy listening to us, the best way to support us is by following us on your chosen podcast app. This could either be Google Podcast, Spotify, or Apple Podcast. Another good way to support us is by following our Instagram account, which is called kaleidoscience_pod. On our Instagram account, you will also get regular information on the next episode. Thanks a lot for supporting us. This was Kaleidoscience, hosted by Elisa Palmer and Sönke Löw. Produced by Alina Ohnesorge, Elisa Palmer, Sönke Löw and Sophie Kühne. Produced in collaboration with the Cognitive Science Student Journal. The music was produced by Jan-Luca Schröder. The logo was designed by Annika Richter. Thank you for listening and joining us on our journey through conversations on cognitive science.